I have another huge review I haven't even finished writing for next year, but I didn't want the year to finish without an end of the year review. So it's time to see another fanatical Christian work. Hi there! Why not follow my socials? Taking surveys for Google, I got some change and decided to buy this Christian manga, King David III. And what could be better for a secular Christmas and New Year's than having fun with this kind of story? And just to be clear, I'm not going to laugh at this particular religion. I just find this kind of fanaticism hilarious. Maybe it's just me, but when I see people who watch Record, an evangelical network, getting surprised that they show Maria having multiple kids, or Catholics as Satanists, I can only laugh.
O irmão de vocês é o Messias.
Everyone loves to pretend they respect other religions until they see something they don't like. King David III is from Canção Nova, Portuguese for New Song, a publishing house specialized in spiritual development books. Read Christian. And that also sells a few comics, despite their store pointing at small pictures before those. As far as I saw, they're all in the same direction. Know the pre-approved story so you can think there's only one religion and be surprised by those who don't follow it. And again, it's about fanaticism. There is no teaching one religion as the only correct one, and not being fanatic, but to the book itself. And just looking at the cover, it's already confusing. I bought this thinking it was King David III, maybe a descendant of the biblical character, but to my surprise, it's the third book of the King David story. Why you'd place a 3 on the bottom and 1 on the top, I don't know, but this number is completely unnecessary. You'd only do this if to give some effect, as in the idea David's descendant continues his mission, or maybe this is the third of the franchise, where we'd see David fighting crime with conjoined twins and a leprechaun.
I'll be your lucky charm.
But since that's not the case, it seems they just branded this with blood. Maybe to be spared by Canção Nova's angel? Which didn't work. Yeah, I'm not starting from the third because I want to. Searching for the comic, I was only able to find the cover for the first volume and this one, which is still on Google Play and other places, but isn't even on Canção Nova's site. Besides that, the first 2 comics seem to have simply vanished from the internet. Hey, incompetence is always more likely than malice. But considering this number, I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to remove the manga. This seems to be the only manga by this publishing house, which makes sure to say it has Oriental reading, from the end to the beginning. So it doesn't look like they'd miss it, but also there are some things here that would probably be disagreeable for parents. We start with a chibi, standard info for the publication, and then Psalms 4, 2-9, which I don't know, but according to Canção Nova themselves, there are some differences. As we can see in their Evangelization Club, above their Evangelize with Us message, and the links for donation. Lists of characters? Okay. And then we start with a flashback saying the king of Israel was hunting David and even priests had died for that, so David went to the land of King Achish. Not that one. King Achish wakes up from a terrible dream. The woman he wakes up with asks if she displeased him, maybe because she hadn't seen he was asleep, or she might still be asleep too, that can also be it. But the king turns chibi and shows a heart, saying what he needs is to speak to the priest, which he had already said. I need to speak to Priest Kai. He can re-edit my dream so Nameku explodes quicker. And this is a good example of what I mean by fanaticism. There's no direct indication here, but the suggestion is that she'd be a concubine, maybe one of 800 wives.
Mentira! Não chegam a 700.
Trying to pluck at the string of "this is an ignominy to moral and civics, decency." But if you have any notion of common sense, not only is there no indication of anything illegal or unethical here, the people here care about each other. You need to be really backward to see 2 people caring for one another and say, "This is horrible, I wouldn't do that." Achish goes to talk to the priest, who tells a young man to prepare a ritual while the king tells him his dream, where he rides a giant fish, cousin of Daedalus, commanding an army of creatures of the Black Lagoon, only with horns and no rotten eggs or dancing.
Unique. That's a word you'll not hear frequently around here.
But a lion man defeats his army, until he gets in front of him where the king sees he has a grave wound on his chest, because a bleeding heart wouldn't be instant death. hey, it's a dream. He wasn't supposed to have X-ray vision either, and when he gets near, he kneels in front of him. So the priest, in a moment of let's force the contrast so they don't see my broken hands, says he's going to speak with his gods, which requires a sacrifice. But instead of 8 stars for a crab turtle, he stabs a guy. And then I ask myself, did the boy put him there? Is that guy doped up so he won't leave? I suppose this could all be part of an already set system. The kid goes to a soldier and tells him to bring someone to the table with binds that don't seem to open or close anywhere and that only hold the neck and forehead? Was the sacrifice supposed to be his eye? And is this in the same room where he meets the priest? This manga takes place in the land of no backgrounds, where having spheres and lines going through could be teleportation or just laziness. The sacrifice makes the gun come into the priest, saying the fish are him and the power the king got from him, and the lion was David who would serve him, to then leave the priest not looking like a fish. And this might be the reason they didn't care if they took the manga from the store. They've just shown a human sacrifice to explain a dream. If the king showed he didn't care about the sacrifice's life, or cared more about his own, or even if he was shown more worried throughout, the dream could have been something much bigger. But it isn't. They're showing something and saying, remember how dreams can be important? Yeah, picture that. Oh damn, I got blood in my inconsistent crown. An issue that is poorly understood about the spectacle in Japanese culture is the sakuga, the moment of more importance. Being fully aware of how limited the story can be by its support, be it manga, light novel or anime, the production makes an effort to transliterate the more important parts in order to make them more impactful. Killing someone is a despicable act, but that doesn't mean that anyone being killed is automatically striking. That's why Knights Against Army doesn't work. That's why I don't like that scene in Rogue One. Darth should have plucked those plans from the guy's hand as soon as he saw him. At least throw some fog so he can see the guy. And on top of that, it was done to explain a dream where a humanoid lion kneels in front of the king. Maybe in biblical times this was incomprehensible, but nowadays it seems obvious that it wouldn't be anything too bad. That's also why the king not feeling haunted by the dream makes a difference. And his next expression being a chibi talking about partying doesn't help. What? We'll be back. We go to David's camp, where we see 2 fellows of him talk about him not being well and not opening up for them, one of them more serious and the other caring only about partying, which at least could be an attempt to associate the negative attitude to King Akish's. Maybe? In fact, this chibi might be the only one that kinda works, because it contrasts with the personality of the character to indicate his frustration. Lamech and the king go SD to talk about partying, but since they barely have any personality, it feels much looser. At the walls of Gates, supposedly before the Japanese send their army to another world, we see David thinking about starting a new life among the Philistines, but being threatened by a soldier, who seems to let go of the shield and sword and still threaten him. David then talking about Goliath. Not that one. And finally getting chibi and laughing. David going SD to tell him to get out of his way, the soldier then telling him how to find the king. And why does David's beard disappear? The others keep their beards. And bombs? Why would a soldier be in front of bombs? He works for Xerxes? I'm really not comfortable with someone in a story in the Middle East having bombs as a wallpaper. And then there are 2 women there. And Lamech says he's in love with the city. 3 little dots. It makes all the difference. Detail, for someone who doesn't read this thinking that fun would automatically be wrong, these 2 women might just be inviting them for a game, and Lamech is the one taking things in that direction. Nothing here could be seen as insinuating without pushing it quite a bit. There's no hormone throw with Front Rusher's hair here. Abdon beats him up, and I only know his name because of that page. They go to the palace where the king says they're welcome, perhaps sarcastically, but it's a bit too loose too. The guards demand their weapons, David complies, despite him letting go of 2 handles that are bigger than might fit his fists, and a hammer is shown on the floor, with projectiles, I think? And the guards attack, David hitting the 2 and leaving them with fat bulldog cheeks, and following up saying he can defeat anyone there, and the king smiles and says it was a test, gets serious, and turns chibi, smiling again. David says he wants asylum, saw the king of Israel being shown then, but I'd say these characters are a little too easy to mix up. Besides his beard having 2 tips down and his crown having a section with circles, he's just another guy with a beard and a crown. David and Akish chibi around, the king giving him asylum and accepting him in his army, they go to Sisalag, where we see random people not too happy. I mean, this guy is not happy. This one here, I can't really tell. He might just be an ancestor of Brock's, but dancers! So it's all good? They face the Jeshurites, talking about how they are good, but they were better, and the Philistines' technology was superior to theirs. And then we see that Lamech has kunai. So those before were kunai? Because there doesn't seem to be a difference between handle and blades there. And if what I said wasn't clear before, it's various panels full of blood, but not exactly well done. Most of them don't even seem to be in the same sequence of events. The kunai seem clear, but how exactly did David defend himself and then use the same right arm to attack the enemy without stopping the enemy with the left beforehand? Either there's a panel missing, or someone didn't notice. This doesn't make any sense. It ends up looking like the author just thought having blood was enough, but that's not how it works. The sky is beautiful, covered in stars, so of course, bombs. Because they're balls of exploding gas? Exactly. The king asks why David is in a good mood with a face that doesn't even seem to be his. He looks like he aged some 10 years since before the battle. David says his joy comes from his gods, and Achish answers saying they have many because just one wouldn't do much, and David says he doesn't believe in them, but never mind. Which is more tolerant than most. That's why it was cancelled, wasn't it? It wouldn't be odd. The king even offers to talk to him if he wants because he doesn't see him as an enemy, to which he says he's honored. To then live in a cloak and meet Lamech also in a cloak, and say he knows that Achish is going to attack Saul, who in turn says he doesn't trust the info because David is a traitor, and he has a different crown and his beard has tips more to the sides just to be more confusing. So Saul decides what to do in front of a background of cracks, as if he's using the Guru Guru no Michu! Go Chibi inside a cave! Of course. There he finds a witch cosplaying as From Dusk Till Dawn, and says he doesn't care about the price, he wants her to romance some necks. And after a very nice image of her using her powers, and one that's not so good where she looks like a cutout on an upside down baking cup, she brings the necroman he wanted to see, Samuel. Saul says God forsake him, Samuel says he left the path of God, and Saul seems joyful? Meanwhile, David faces the Amalekites. Abdon says he knows David isn't well, and he says he is. Achish says he wanted David in the battle against Israel, but the other princes wouldn't let him, and Chibis to make clear they think David would betray them. But then, David says he wants to help Saul. So they are right. The hero wants to betray the king that took him in. And finally, the citizens of Sisalag say they've been attacked by the Amalekites, and David decides to defend the city and leave Saul to the will of God. And honestly, there isn't much here. We have supernatural rituals that change nothing, fights that change nothing, alleged drama that change nothing, and the most interesting part was the author drawing David with a large nose to associate his image to that of a lion. Everything else is empty and inconsequential. Unless this was done for someone who already knows how the story is going to play out, there is no development. The whole conflict boils down to David wanting to help Samuel, but not being able to. All else is at the most momentary, and I simply don't see how more attention was given to a fight scene with loose soldiers than a dream talking about an army of fishmen against a lion man. It's poorly thought out, throwing chibis willy-nilly and letting great opportunities go. This kind of story is not different than political propaganda. It's just a person closing themselves in a room to say the echo agrees with them. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, each one in their own house. If we're lucky, people are going to start cooperating with each other next year. And if you enjoyed it, hit the bell.